we need to talk about something I've heard you speak about on other programs, how close we came to nuclear confrontation. Of course, we're talking about the permission that Zelensky, Ukraine, has been begging, seeking, really just prying for from the United States to around long-range missile strikes into Russia. Of course, this is not going to stop. This conversation continues to be brought up, and there are reports that the State Department and the Pentagon are in disagreements. The Pentagon, we've heard Lloyd Austin say publicly that he is not in agreement with giving these capabilities for maybe reasons different than ours. The State Department is all in 150% with Kiev's own trajectory. Now, I want to ask you this in the context of this event that you're holding on September 29th or organizing. I'll pull it up. The part of organizing, the 28th, sorry.
Don't go September 28th. No one will be there.
Yes, do not come on the 28th. I will pull up the exact information as you're speaking, Scott. But talk about this because Putin did say directly this would be a confrontation, a NATO confrontation with Russia. Russia would engage with NATO directly, which has huge implications that I'd like you to discuss.
Well, the first thing is we start with the notion that, again, because of this ignorance about Russia and all things Russia, because our policy is more directed by Russophobia than actual knowledge of Russia. One of the operating premise that guides everything here is that Russia is bluffing. That Russia's not serious, Russia's not going to do this, that they're just, rattling the saber, etc. Again, I would just say that these people are as ignorant as the day is long about this. You've interviewed Ray McGovern, right?
Yes.
All right. You have respect for Ray?
I do. We need to have him back on, actually.
Ray's a good guy. Ray's a former CIA analyst, used to brief the President of the United States. That's how good of an analyst he was. He briefed the presidential daily briefing. Only the top guys get to do that. Taught me a lot of things about how to approach Russian analysis, etc. But Ray, back when I was talking about how in December of 2021 how sanctions were going to backfire, Ray was focused on one thing. He was focused on Ukraine and NATO missiles. And he said, Scott, this is a big deal. And I looked at it and I went, why? Because I'm stupid. But and Ray's smart. I was like, no, I'm worried about sanctions and economic sanctions. He's like, no, this missile thing's going to be really big. It's going to come back and bite. And I said, well, tell me more. What are you talking about? He said, well, the Russians made a big deal out of not wanting NATO missiles on Ukrainian soil. I said, okay, I get it, but why? He said, because, look, draw the map. And I looked at it and just imagine for a second how big Ukraine is. It's a big country. And imagine instead of being painted NATO blue, you painted it Soviet red and looked at now its western frontier. That used to be where NATO had to start from to attack Russia. So all that territory that's on the other side of Ukraine, starting Rostov-on-Don, going into the interior of Voronezh, you get in deeper and deeper. It was hard for NATO to strike that. And so Russia put a lot of facilities in there, logistics facilities, nuclear command and control facilities, etc., over here, because that was the Russian rear, difficult to strike. Now suddenly Ukraine is NATO blue, and you move missile systems into Ukraine, and all those things that were deep in the rear are now reachable. And the Russians are like, we don't want this. This is some of our most sensitive stuff. We can't have NATO missiles able to strike this stuff quickly. Red line. And Biden originally agreed. He said, yes, we'll make sure that's part of any discussion we have. But then when Blinken sat down with Lavrov and his counterparts to talk about, bringing these concerns, he said, no, that's not, we never agreed to that. Ukraine will always have the potential of being armed the way that it wants to be armed, including these weapons. The Russians like, no, that literally, no, that's not going to happen. And I don't think the West ever believed the Russians. And so now it's happened. We have Storm Shadows in. We have Scalp missiles, which is the French equivalent of Storm Shadow. We have ATACMS. The Germans were talking about sending Taurus, and the Americans still talking about sending a joint standoff munition. These are systems that can reach inside and hit Russia in places Russia doesn't want to be hit. And it creates the potential for a conventional preemptive attack, an attack that allows Russia to be decapitated, leading to additional preemptive attacks. Now, preemption is a word I want everybody to be focused on because this is what it's all about. This is why Russia's not bluffing. We're talking about literal existential issues here. If you preempt, the whole concept of preemption is to prevent the other side from doing that which it is planning on doing. So a key aspect of preemption is that it works both ways. So if you say, well, we're going to build a capability to preempt Russians' reaction, the Russians are saying they're building the capability to preempt us. We need to build a capability to preempt them. So now you have mutual preemption, which means everything's on a hair trigger alert. And conventional, okay, so boom, 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 the world's not over. But now we get to nuclear. Now, how do we get from conventional to nuclear? It's interesting. If you remember, again, back in the fall of 2022, we discussed this, where the NATO went to Russia and said, if you do this, we will respond with all of this capability. We're going to come in and hit you with, it's all conventional. But if you use a nuke against Ukraine, we're going to do it. And the Russians were like, well, we ain't going to use a nuke against you, but thank you for telling us what you're going to do to us. We take it seriously. So now we have a situation where Russia is saying, okay, if you use these weapons, we're going to attack you with our conventional systems. And it'll be overwhelming. And then NATO will say, well, but then we're going to come in and attack you. So now the question is, who gets to attack who first? Now it comes down to preemption. The bottom line is the Russians are probably in a better position they'll achieve some sort of dominance in this conventional strike exchange, which now brings in American nuclear doctrine, which leads heavily towards nuclear preemption. In fact, we have a doctrine that talks about nuclear preemption, and we've made weapons for nuclear prevention. The primary weapon today for this, it's been said in the United States Congress, so I'm not giving away secrets here, is the Trident missile on board an Ohio-class submarine, which has been outfitted with a W76-2 low-yield nuclear weapon. This is the weapon of choice for nuclear preemption, and we use it to control the escalation dynamic. That by using this low-yield weapon, we're sending a signal to the Russians that you can't prevail in any low yield or limited nuclear warfare, and that but we're giving you an opportunity to stop before we escalate. So there it is, the silver bullet, the W76-2 on top of a Trident submarine. Okay, everybody's going, well, Scott, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's control. Okay, now let's go back to that warhead, the W76-2. You know what that means, guys? Help you out here. It means that there's a W76 version 1. And there are about 860 of them. And they're loaded on Trident missiles. Now, these are 100 kiloton weapons. They're older weapons. Their accuracy, because these are weapons that were made back in the 70s and the 80s, their accuracy isn't that good. So you have to, in order to destroy a missile silo in the ground, you're going to have to fire, it's a classified number, but we'll just make one up, 5. 5 warheads have to come in so you can get the probability of kill to take out this missile silo. But what we did, because remember, we're capped on the number of missiles or warheads we can have too by the New START treaties. There's only so many of them, a finite number of them, and each one has to be put to a target. And as the adversary creates more targets, the Russians put more missiles in the ground, the Chinese are starting to put missiles in the ground. We're going, holy cow, we can't give 5-1 anymore. That creates a problem. How do we solve that problem? Well, we came up with a new fuse. We have a new fusing mechanism for the W76-1, which now gives us a PK factor of 1-1, meaning that for every silo in the ground, we get to fire a W76-1, and it will hit it, and that 100 megatons is going to collapse the silo, and we killed it. Well, that just freed us up, man, because now we got all these new 1-1 kills that we can put out there, and we're thinking, if we get into one of these crazy escalation things, we can preempt the Russians now because we have first strike preemption capability. we now can fire this and have enough left over to take out the Chinese weapons and still have the big WWIII bombs with 800 kilotons that could take out the cities. And all. Man, we just won the war, the nuclear war. We won it because we can preempt you. And the Russians are all sitting there going, oh, yeah, I guess you can. So we're going to have to come up with our own preemption. And they have done that. That's the Sarmat. That's the Yars mobile missile. That's the Poseidon submarine. All these new weapon systems are out there. But now the Russians today, as we speak, just so everybody gets really comfortable, Putin's meeting with his national security strategy team to talk about Russia's deterrence strategy and its new nuclear employment plan. Just what we're talking about right now. Right now, the Russians are saying we're going to preempt America. Guys, chew on it. It's real. The Russians now are saying you got a preemption policy backed by preemptive weapons. So we're going to have a preemption policy too. So now the Russians are going to be forward-leaning, looking at us. And they're very nervous. You know what they're nervous about? Those Trident missiles with the W-76-1s coming out on a low reduced trajectory that can hit these sites within minutes of being launched. So they're hyper-vigilant for Trident missile launches. Let's go back in time. Tell a war story from February 2020, back when Donald Trump was president. And he had a Secretary of Defense named Mark Espers. And little Mark Espers went to Omaha, Nebraska to participate in an exercise with Strategic Command. And they did an exercise because now the W-76-2 low-yield bomb had been put on Trident submarine missiles on the Ohio-class submarines. So they run a little war game. It involves the Baltics and the Russians. And NATO, Russia invaded. NATO kicked Russia's ass. And so Russia, put a tactical nuke into the Baltics. Escalate. And what did we do? We fired a Trident missile equipped with W-76-2s into Russia, saying, there, see, we managed this escalation. Did you hear what I just said? We fired a Trident missile. You think the Russians know what warhead we have on that missile? Are they going to say, oh, it's just a W-76-2. Don't worry about it. Forget our policy of nuclear preemption. We would never fire Trident missiles with W-76s against you preemptively, would we? Russians aren't going to believe that. So now, in any scenario, and we've exercised this scenario, people, it's not fake. Espers actually gave the launch order. We've exercised it. It's in. It's hardwired in. If we decide to escalate using W-76-2s, we're going to use a Trident missile to deliver it. And the Russians now, thanks to the Putin meeting, will say, we assume that the preparation to launch a Trident missile against a Russian target with a nuclear warhead is a preemptive strike. We fire all our missiles, get them out of the ground. Because that's the whole idea. To defeat preemption, you use the resources that are being targeted. You don't keep them in the ground to get hit. You use them. And so Russia will go full forward with its own preemptive strike to take out America, and we're all dead. Do you see the stupidity of where we're at today? It's just a one-way ticket on a highway to hell. And no American is thinking about this. We're thinking about everything but this. Even the people, and God bless the people that are worried about Gaza. Really, I'm with you. God bless the people worried about Lebanon. I'm with you. I met a wonderful Lebanese family in New York City back in June. That flew out there for, I was supposed to have an anti-war rally in Central Park. It got canceled because it's impossible to organize in Central Park anymore. They're not demonstration friendly. But I met with, sort of the consolation prizes. I went to New York City and had lunch with this family. Wonderful people. They're in Beirut right now. Scared to death. I'm worried about them. Guys, my heart is with Gaza. My heart is with, but I can't do anything about them if we die in a nuclear war. And we are so front-loaded for a nuclear war right now. This has to be the number one issue of our time. Because if we ignore this, and I'm telling you right now, everything I just told you, 99.9999% of the people in your audience had no clue that it was there. None. Because they're not focused on it. They're not worried about nuclear war. They don't think it's real. They don't think it's going to happen. And if they did, they're going to be told by the government the Russians are bluffing. Don't worry about it. We got this under control. We don't have anything under control. We don't have anything under control. This is as out of control as it gets. We have an election coming up where we get to vote. And what I'm telling people is vote for the person that is articulating the best possible route to avoid a nuclear war with Russia. Don't give your vote away to anybody right now. Don't say, I'm giving it to Trump, I'm giving it to Harris, I'm giving it to Stein. Don't say that, because the second you say that, you don't count. You just negated yourself as being a voice between now and November 5th. Why? You gave away your vote. Why do they care about you anymore? I don't care about you. You're irrelevant. You already told me you're voting for it. The political grease goes on the squeaky wheel. Our job between now and November 5th is to become the squeaky wheel. I want this wheel to squeak so loud, and I want this wheel to be about stopping a nuclear war. Squeak, squeak, squeak. And now the political grease gets slapped on. Political grease is our candidates saying how they're going to stop the wheel from squeaking. How do they mollify me? How do they prevent me from making this an issue? Convince me you're not going to go to war. You know, people kept saying, Scott, you're Don Quixote, tilting at windmills, maybe. You're chasing unicorns. You're never going to happen. Screw you. First of all, screw you. You know, because this is life and death. So I don't play those kind of freaking games. This is as real as it gets. And you think I'm a goddamn amateur? Excuse my language. I don't want to get you kicked off or anything, but I'm getting a little mad here. You guys think I fake this shit? Did I make this up? No. I've done this before. I know what I'm talking about. Let me tell you a little story. There was an op-ed written in The Hill last week by Robert Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump Jr. Do you think that happened by accident? Do you think it just happened? No, processes were initiated that resulted in that happening. Processes that are related to what we're talking about here, me and the rally that's taking place. We've already had a success because one campaign has committed to a narrative. Is it the perfect disarmament narrative? No. Is it the perfect prevent nuclear war narrative? No. But it's there on the table. The squeaky wheel got the political grease. Now, what are you going to do to help me to get the Harris campaign to commit, to get Jill Stein to commit? What happens if we get all of them to say this is an issue now? We have debate, dialogue, discussion, exactly the things we need in a democracy to inform the public and make the public hold their potential elected representatives accountable for what they do in their name. Guys, this is not a hopeless cause. This is not tilting windmills. This is not chasing unicorns. This is saving your damn lives. This is about making life livable. It's about having a future. This is as real as it gets. I'm committed to it. We're having a rally in Kingston on 28 September. Roger Waters is going to, he has agreed to, he's going to come on and speak for a while and then going to play some music. I think Two Sons in the Sunset, his classic song about nuclear war, is going to be one of the songs, but then we there's issues out there. We're not ignoring the issues. Max Blumenthal and his wonderful wife, Anya Parampel, are going to come in and talk about, the Middle East and the Gaza situation, and now Hezbollah. Judge Andrew Napolitano is going to talk about the assault on free speech. Gerald Celente is going to talk about democracy and the peace movement, and I'm going to get up there and talk about preventing a nuclear war, what I call Operation Dawn. Operation Dawn is just 4 simple questions asked to the American public. What are you going to do to save democracy? What are you going to do to save America? What are you going to do to save the world? How are you going to use your vote in November? That's 4. I'm a Marine. 4 fingers. I guess I was counting my thumb. But Operation Dawn. And it begins on September 20. Now, like any military guy, I've done a little bit of reconnaissance beforehand, a little bit of preparation of the battlefield, and we got an op-ed piece published in The Hill. Again, that's an accomplishment that I don't think the people understand. We got a major campaign to commit in writing to how it wants to stop a nuclear war and stop the conflict in Ukraine. That's a big deal. We're going to start the major operation on the 28th, and it continues through November 5th. It won't stop. And I'm inviting everybody to be part of this. If you can't attend physically, and we'd like to shut Kingston down to make a statement. Hell, if we shut down the Thruway, that would be an even better statement. If we shut down New York State, that would be awesome, but we're not going to. We're shutting down downtown Kingston. But if you can't make it, I don't expect you to fly in from California. We're going to be streaming it live. Danny, I guess I have to talk to you. I don't know if we're going to, if you want to put it on your platform, but we're going to have it on a whole bunch of platforms, streaming it live. It's from 2:00 till 6:00. You're not going to get discussions like this anywhere else. And then, it'll be there. We're going to chop it up and continue to plug it into the system. And we're going to continue with follow-on functions until November. Become a part of this. And it's not because I want you to do me a favor. Screw me. Do yourself a favor. Do you want to live? I don't know how to make it clear to you. You almost died on the 14th of September. You almost died because somebody didn't give a damn about you. That somebody was Joe Biden. He was getting ready to sign a piece of paper that would have set in motion events that had the high probability of leading to a general nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia. Well, I wasn't briefed on that. No, none of us were. Did you vote on it? Did you say that's what you want? No, our nuclear policy is on full automatic. It's time to bring that to an end. It's time for we, the people, to assert the one thing the Constitution gives us, which is the ability to pick our elected officials. Let's make this vote count. And defend free speech in the meantime, because again, to make this vote count, I have to be allowed to do what I'm doing. The FBI raided my house. They don't want me doing this. They're afraid of this. The Department of Justice damn sure doesn't want me doing this. They don't want anybody doing this. That's why Judge Andrew Napolitano, they're going to be talking about the danger of the assault on free speech and the imperative of having free speech and exercising this right of free speech. We have to hold our government accountable for what it does in our name. That means we have to start asking uncomfortable questions about nuclear war. Is this really the outcome we want? Do we really have people in power that know what they want? Did you guys vote for something called the interagency? It wasn't on any ballot I won, but the last time I had a conversation with a senior official from the Biden administration, I was told, and others were told, that even though Biden wanted to go back to sole purpose doctrine, meaning the only purpose of America's nuclear arsenal is to deter against nuclear attack. Okay, still have nuclear weapons, but you're only going to use them if we're attacked with nuclear weapons first, right? Yes, that's sole purpose doctrine. Biden didn't do it. We continued the Trump era policy of nuclear preemption. Leaning forward as a former deputy undersecretary of defense, assistant secretary of defense under Trump said, the goal of the Trump administration was to have the Russians and the Chinese wake up every morning not knowing whether or not this was the day America was going to nuke them. Do you guys understand how stupid that is? If someone came to you and said the goal of Russia is to make us all wake up, all Americans wake up today not knowing whether Russia is going to nuke us, we'd say that's insane. That's unacceptable. Well, that was the policy, and that's the policy of the Biden administration today. Did you vote for it? You know who vetoed him trying to go to sole purpose? The interagency. The interagency. What does that mean? The establishment. Did you vote for them? Did you feel that your voice is being heard here? Or have we, the people, allowed ourselves to be excised from this process, so much so that we have an unelected blob in Washington, D.C. making life and death decisions on our behalf? I call BS on that one. I'm not willing to let that happen. And I hope you're not willing to let it either. So come Kingston on the 28th of September and become part of Operation Dawn. Join me in this crusade to make a better future by stopping a nuclear war.
Yes, indeed. And here are the details again. Saturday, September 28th, starting at 2 p.m. There you can see the address. Hopefully you can see it on your screen as big as it can be, in Kingston, New York. So you can head there in person. And then there will, of course, be lots of places where you can catch the live stream of this event if you're unable to make it in person. Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.